Hey guys, Victor here, coming to you with another deck profile, and for today's video, we're going to be doing Dark World. Now, this isn't going to be like your standard Danger Dark World. Instead, I'm going to be taking inspiration from the Fiendsmith Dark World deck that has been seeing some play recently, just because it's a variant that I've always really wanted to try out, because I feel it fixes one of the biggest issues that Dark World has, which just so happens to be that it completely crumbles to cards like Nibiru, which this version just doesn't do because it's able to make DDD Wave Hiking Caesar basically for next to nothing. So with that in mind, let's just jump straight into it. As always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup first, and we're of course going to be playing 3 Genta Gateman of Dark World. So this card is by far one of the best cards in the entire deck, just because it does so much for it consistency wise. As if you have it in your hand, you're able to discard this card to search out the Gates of Dark World, which is the main field spell for the Dark World strategy. And that's not a once per turn effect either, right? So if you open up multiples, or if at some point in the game you bounce one back to your hand using like your Graphas or your Reign-beaux, you can continue to use it and just thin out your deck even more for one of the stronger cards in your deck, being the field spell. And as if that wasn't good enough, right? Just having this card pretty much just gives you full reign to do whatever you want. As you add your gates, so that means you have a Fiend monster in your graveyard. You're going to be able to discard a card, ideally something like Snoww, and then you're also going to be able to draw a card. So one card just for providing so much value for you is honestly just insane. And as if that wasn't good enough, right? When this card is banished and you control a face-up Dark World card, it's able to special summon itself back once per turn. And it's pretty much just always going to be able to do that, right? Because you're going to have the Gates of the Dark World on the field. And that in turn means that in addition to the draw and the discard, you're also going to have free fodder on the field to do with what you want. So you can exceed with it, you can fusion with it, you can potentially synchro with it, you can link with it. This card, it really just does do so much for the deck, and I've never understood why people say you shouldn't be playing 3. But I'm sure you guys will let me know why I'm wrong down in the comments below, so feel free to do that. Then, to accompany our 3 Gentas, we're playing 3 Snoww Unlight of Dark World. It gets discarded, you search out any Dark World card. Pretty straightforward. Then for the other 3 we're playing 3 Reign-beaux Overking of Dark World. So when this card is discarded, it searches out any level 5 or higher Dark World monster from your deck to your hand except itself. And that means that you can either add the OG Grapha, you can add Sillva, or I guess if you want to play it, you could also play like Lucent because it's a level 6 Fiend, but we're not doing that, or Gold, which is just inferior to Sillva in every way. But even so, being able to have as many cards to access those key level 5 or higher monsters is just invaluable. And much like the original Grapha, this card is able to bounce back your face-up Dark World monsters back to your hand in order to summon itself. However, unlike Grapha, they have to be level 7 or lower Dark World monsters. They cannot be anything that's level 8 or higher. So just be aware with that. And then, just being able to have a 3k beat stake that's able to bring itself back and recycle your resources, it's pretty good. And then speaking of the OG Grapha, we are just playing 2 of the original. I don't feel like you need 3. 2 is more than enough to get the job done. It's very easy to access this card, and its effects honestly aren't that great, as when it's discarded, it just pops cards. That's all it does. But the main value of Grapha comes from being able to bounce back resources on your field back to your hand, much like with Reign-beaux, but you're able to do a little bit more, as unlike Reign-beaux, you don't have the level restriction, so you can bounce back your Reign-beaux, summon the Grapha, and then you have even more discard fodder to try and work with. Then for the other 2 you're playing 2 Sillva Warlord of Dark World. If you're playing a deck like Dark World, you basically want to lean into the degeneracy as much as possible, and what that means is you're basically going to go for the hand loop route every single time, and in order to accomplish that, you need your Sillvas. And much like Grapha, I don't really feel like you need more than 2, just because it's very easy to have access to this card at some point, as, let's face it, you're going to be drawing your entire deck essentially. So, yeah, 2 Sillva is more than enough, but when it's discarded, it summons itself, and then if your opponent discards it, it also loops them for 2, and we have a couple of ways to force our opponent to discard it, so yeah, it's perfectly fine like that. And then for the final Dark World monster, we're playing the 1 Ceruli Guru of Dark World. So this is actually going to be one of the main methods that we use to discard our own cards, as when it's discarded, you summon it to your opponent's field, and then its effect becomes you discard, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. And yeah, this card, it's honestly insane with what it's able to do, as it triggers every single one of your Dark World secondary effects if they have it. They don't always, but sometimes they do. And if you're discarding Sillva, you get to loop 2. If you're discarding Reign-beaux, for example, you get to special summon from your deck to either side of the field. It just gets out of hand so fast once this card hits the field. And yeah, I don't know. It's it's stupid how insane this card is. And that's it for the Dark World lineup. We are still playing a couple of danger monsters, but it's not as heavy of a focus as it was originally. We're playing 2 danger Nessies. It's fine, but it's honestly my least favorite of the dangers because it doesn't really have as much synergy as I would like it to do, as it's a level 7 monster, and if it ends up being discarded, it adds to your hand instead of being able to special summon a guaranteed danger monster onto the field. So that's why I lowered it down to 2, and then for the rest of them, we just play a bunch of 1-of dangers, being the 1 Bigfoot to pop cards, the 1 Mothman to draw 1, discard 1, the 1 Tsuchinoko because it guarantees a body every single time, and the 1 Danger Jackalope, much for the same reasons, as it's able to basically guarantee a body every single time. We don't play Chupacabra because it sucks, and we don't play Danger Thunderbird because it also sucks. But yeah, this is honestly more than enough. I don't feel like you need more than this to be able to play this deck completely. And then with that, we can move on to the other monsters. And we're still going to be rocking Gen and Ken. You can play Gen and Ken, or you can play Quackimira Guardian. I've already expressed my opinions on why I feel Gen and Ken is superior in basically every single way. But it really just does come down to player preference. But at the end of the day, let me just sum it up this way. You get infinitely way more value out of Gen and Ken than you would out of Quackimira Guardian. And that's basically what my argument is. So that's why I'm going to be playing these pretty much in every single Dark World deck that I ever build. And then for the Fiendsmith engine that we have touched upon, but we haven't really focused on yet, we're just be playing the 2 Fiendsmith engravers and the 1 Fabled Lurrie. So much like the previous tournament deck profile I did, the the Fiendsmith monsters serve 1 focus. And the only goal of these cards is to make DDD wave High King Caesar, as being able to make the High Caesar guarantees that you will not be losing to either Nibiru or Bestials, as your opponent is going to be forced to use them preemptively before you even started off with your really good combos. And just being able to force out a card out of your opponent's hand guaranteed it's honestly just invaluable. So even though there isn't really much synergy that these cards have with the deck, the options that it provides you with and the opportunities that it provides you with are just unmatched. That's why I wanted to include them into the deck, but they don't really have the main focus that they would in other Fiendsmith decks, as we don't even play the Lacrima, we're not going to be playing Sequence, and we're not going to be playing Desert Ray. This is literally just High King Caesar Turbo, and that's it. And with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and traps. Now that we're finally on the spell and trap lineup, I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's pretty straightforward, all things considered. There isn't going to be too much variance compared to most other Dark World decks, but even so, we're going to be playing 3 the Gates of Dark World. If you're playing 3 Genta, you got to be playing 3 Gates. People are always saying, why would you play 3 Gates? You get more than enough off of 2, and sure, you're right. You can typically end the game off of 2 alone, but this card is just so insane at being able to help you draw, discard, whatever, that I feel like you should always be including 3 of it. But much like with Genta, tell me why I'm wrong down below. Then for the other 3 of, we're playing 3 Allure of Darkness. We're just going to pretend that Draw Lockbird just does not exist. So we're going to be using Allure to draw 2 cards, and then we typically have enough fodder in our hand to be able to banish something that doesn't really matter in the long run. So yeah, those 2 cards are going to be greatly appreciated, and that's it for the 3 ofs. Then for the 2 ofs, we're playing 2 Dark Corridor. 1, 2, 3, it really does not matter how many you play as long as you resolve the 1. I'm still a really big fan of 3, just because I feel like you want to see this card every single game, but it really doesn't matter. So yeah, 2 Dark Corridors is perfectly fine, and then we just have a bunch of 1-of spells. We have the 1 Dark World Accession to Fusion Summon into Grapha, the 1 Fiendsmith Tract to be able to access our Fiendsmith combo, the 1 Called by the Grave to maybe beat the Dimension Shifter if we go first for once, which probably won't happen, but hey, you can dream. You have the 1 Thrust, which is very easy to activate, as we are constantly giving our opponent monsters through Gen and Ken, and the Ceruli. And then what you're typically going to be adding off of that is either going to be your talent or your card destruction. And you can also get your other cards too, right? You can get your Allures, you can get your Dark Corridors, you can get your Tract if you're really desperate. You have choices. And with that, that's the spell and trap lineup. No traps, which is all gas, which is why we're not playing any traps. And we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now that we're finally on the extra deck portion of the video, we're going to be starting off with the Exceed monsters first. And we're going to be starting off with the first one being number 41, Bagooska, the Terribly Tired Tapir. It's fine. It's literally only in there for if you get hit by Droll Lockbird and Dimension Shifter as like a plan B of sorts. But let's face it, it never works anyways. But it's just nice to have the hope. Then you have the 1 number 60 Dugares, the Timeless. all of its effects are really solid, whether you're boosting your attack, reborning from the graveyard, but the most important one is being able to draw 2 and then discard 1. As this deck, if you go straight to the battle phase once you activate this effect, it's honestly fine because your opponent's typically not going to be able to break your board anyways, and your field is typically going to be flooded just by a bunch of really strong monsters that can end the game right then and there. So yeah, the consistency that this card offers you just far outweighs the drawbacks of the card, so that's why we include it. And then for the other Exceeds monsters, we're playing the 1 DDD Wave High King Caesar. Like I said earlier, this card is literally only there to help us beat Bestials and Nibiru. And that's honestly one of like the biggest drawbacks that this deck has, right? As it's very susceptible to those cards, and the Fiendsmith engine, while it's a little pricey, I feel like it's more than well worth it to include it in this deck, just because being able to have one singular card or one singular engine that allows you to just completely play through those obnoxious cards that would otherwise like end your game is just it really is just invaluable. So I really enjoy including the 1 Caesar. And then for the final Exceed monster, we're playing the 1 Coach King Giantrainer. It takes 3 level 8s. You draw a card by detaching 1 material, and you're able to do that 3 times. And then if you draw a monster, you burn your opponent for 800. So this deck takes forever to combo off, so you probably will be going to time at some point. So having something like Coach King Giantrainer in your deck just to be able to potentially win the game in time it's very much needed, as this is pretty much the only card in the deck that does this. And that's it for the Exceed monsters. Then for the links, we're playing the 1 Security Dragon and the 1 Akashic Magician to bounce back cards like Ceruli, Danger, Sillva, maybe even Ken again if like you're that far ahead in your combo, whatever. But it's basically just there to bounce back, give you back more resources to continue further comboing on your opponent. Then you have the Fiendsmith stuff being the 1 Requiem to cheat out your engravers from deck, and then the 1 Moon of the Closed Heaven. So this deck is able to just put out monsters in the field incredibly easy, right? And having access to Moon of the Closed Heaven means that you pretty much have access to your Fiendsmith combo at every single turn. And like I said earlier, if you make the High King Caesar, chances are that you've already won the game right then and there, because in order to out it, your opponent's going to need at least 2 cards, and those precious resources are usually more than what a player wants to commit to be able to try and stop a Darkhold player. So yeah, gotta include the 1 Moon. Then for the other links, we're playing the 1 Muckraker from the Underworld to bring back Fiends from the Graveyard, the 1 IP Masquerena to go into a SP Little Knight during our opponent's turn, and then for the final link monster, we're playing the 1 Saryuja Skuldred, just because it's another consistency piece, much for the same reasons of the Moon card. This card pretty much allows us to clean up our board, because we are going to end up clogging it at some point, which is like a bajillion monsters. So being able to clean up our board, draw 4 cards, put 3 bad ones at the bottom, special summon from our hand, boost our guys' attacks by 300. This card is just phenomenal. And then that's it for the links. And then for the synchros, we're playing 1 Chaos Angel, and this is going to be the only synchro monster that we're playing, but it's an incredibly strong one, as if you're making it, we have plenty of lights and darks, right? We play a bunch of level 4 darks in the form of Genta, Snoww, and then our level 6s are going to be the Fiendsmith cards themselves. So whether you're going first or second, this card is just going to be a pain for your opponent to deal with, as it's basically going to be having both invulnerabilities from being able to be destroyed by battle, and your opponent's also not going to be able to affect it with activated monster effects. And as if that wasn't good enough, when this card is summoned, it banishes a card on the field, right? So this card, it's insane at what it's able to provide you with. And for that special summon effect, another really cool tip is that if you have like Muckraker in your extra deck, right, and you haven't used it yet, you can link off the Chaos Angel into the Muckraker, and then Muckraker's effect will bring back the Chaos Angel, and then you get to just banish another card. So yeah, I'm a really big fan of what the Fiendsmith engine offers, in addition to just the Wave High King Caesar, because it gives you another method to just try and break your opponent's board pretty easily, in my opinion. And then that's it for the synchros. And then for the fusions, you play the 1 Necroquip Princess just to be able to make the Caesar, and then lastly the 1 Grapha fusion. And with that, that's the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!